Isabel, thank you so much for coming to share your story with our listeners. And we can just jump straight into your journey as a dietitian. I know that you said before you started your own business, you were working, sounds like a full-time job, and you decided to take the leap into online entrepreneurship. So tell us a little bit about that decision. What inspired you to get out of the 9 to 5 and start your own thing?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I just always had a tendency to hustle, I guess, and so when I actually before I transitioned into full-time investing in my business, I was working 2 jobs alongside my business, so I was working full-time at a mental health agency, really focusing on working with clients with eating disorders and other, mental health diagnoses, and I was also working for another coaching business as a hired on dietitian. And, there were a lot of things that I felt like could be different in both of those jobs. And so I started just kind of getting my LLC, maybe taking on like 2 to 3 clients, really had not a lot of background, but overall took the experience from my other jobs to bring into my own practice and do it in a way that I felt would be most effective and most beneficial for the clients that I was serving. And that picked up very quickly until I could no longer juggle all 3. And so I quit the other 2 and really took that leap of faith and invested in my business. And that was scary, but also really exciting because I knew there were so many ideas, so many conversations, experiences that I was getting in my client calls, even with my other jobs, that I wanted to bring into my own practice and I knew could improve the outcomes of the clients I was serving.
Mhm.
So that was the initial leap of faith that I felt like really, send me on this trajectory with working with you. I joined NBA at the cusp of that, knowing that I really wanted to do this thing right at the get-go. And here I am today, about 3 years later, still going for it.
Mhm. Yeah. And before we hit record, you were telling me about the transition you made in the NBA program going from, was it 100% insurance based or just mostly insurance based? What was the business like before you did the NBA?
Yeah, it was almost 100% insurance based. So I had a contract with Blue Cross Blue Shield, and a lot of people were under Blue Cross Blue Shield, but even people who weren't paying through insurance, they would just do one-off, sessions,
Mhm.
and it was definitely a little chaotic. I remember at a certain point, I was having like 7 one-on-one sessions a day, which means like an 8-hour day with a lunch break. And during that lunch break, I'm like mad doing session notes, right? And looking at labs and looking at backgrounds. I can't even imagine doing that today, but that was what I was trying to manage. Plus, right, all the red tape when it comes to navigating insurance. So having to call insurance and my clients calling insurance and all of that. So there was definitely a lot of added stress, and I was trying to make the income I wanted. And so that's really my only option, right? To take on more clients, take on more hours. And I was very exhausted. I was, when me and my husband talk about this and I look back, I always apologize. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I was like a shell of a person. Because at the end of the day, if you're just like helping, talking on calls, like you have nothing left. And so
Mhm.
I remember just like crashing on the couch, not be able to say anything, not be able to have a conversation. So it definitely took a huge toll on my life. And I think that was really a turning point for me on saying something has to change here.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I don't think it's probably pretty obvious what the motivation to not do that anymore was. But before we hit record, you were telling me about your trajectory in the NBA program. And I didn't realize, I mean, I probably would have remembered this if I really thought back to it, but because this was 3 years ago. And remind me, were you in the beta round of NBA?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
very
so,
first
like,
round.
first round, and so, since then we've had, like, I think over 300 people do the program, so I don't always remember exactly where everybody was in the program, but all of that said, I didn't remember that you had gone right into more of a scalable signature program straight out of that insurance model. So can you tell people, first of all, like I said, it's probably obvious why you did that, but, like, what was that transition like going from that, 7 calls a day, exhausted at the end, can't even talk to your husband, to this model that allowed you to start really leveraging your time more effectively?
I mean, like you said, I think there are some obvious things that needed to change. And I knew I enjoyed being a dietitian. I knew I loved what I did, but I was losing that day to day, week to week. And so, really, I was thinking, I took this step for a reason. How do I preserve the joy in this job, the passion that I have in what I do, and create space for not only for me to show up the way that I want to in my job, but also to show up in my life, right? What's the point of investing all this energy in clients and also making an income that I want if I can't even do anything with it when I clock out? So that was a big motivator. And that's really where I think the NBA program served as just this foundation of understanding of what I could do rather than, well, this is all I can do. Especially in the dietetic field, there's not a lot of creativity. So much stuff has just been done the same for decades. And so even using the NBA and seeing, okay, there's opportunity here to streamline what I'm doing for my clients. And so for your listeners, just to know a little bit about me, my niche is really working in the intersection of women's health and disordered eating. And that was a big reason why I transitioned into doing my own practice because I saw a lot of people doing women's health. I saw a lot of people in the eating disorders, disordered eating world, but didn't feel like they were having this conversation. And so as I was helping my clients, I was like, hey, there's these common themes, there's these common milestones, there's these common wins, right, that we're celebrating together. I could put this in a signature program that many people could join. And I find that a lot of the conversations I was having with clients, they were saying how lonely they felt, how they felt like no one understood them, that they felt like when they shared it with family and friends, people were saying things that were harmful and not really helpful. And so I was thinking, how can I not only serve my clients better by creating community for them, streamline the way that I am teaching them, helping them, guiding them to get the results that they want, and also create a life that I actually want without feeling so drained.
Yeah.
So all those pieces, I mean, it came together into really creating my scalable signature program, which was a game changer for me.
Yeah. Well, and then so after you created it, I know you said you launched it twice that year after creating it. What was the impact on you after creating that and launching it?
Oh my gosh, I felt like a different person. I mean, one, I think I just got so much joy from being on calls with a group of women and seeing them feed off of each other and encourage each other and support each other. I mean, that's stuff that I wasn't able to do in my one on one. So it wasn't even just about this like new fancy program that I was creating, but really seeing how beneficial it was for the women I was serving. And I remember, I mean, going back, I had all these fears like, what if, the group isn't going to be customized enough? Or, what if people fall through the cracks? And I just wish, someone at that time, which was mostly you in my head, was like, hey, like, let's address
Hold on.
doing
Hold on, hold on.
something new and
Hold on.
different and not really the fear of the program itself and the results that it would yield.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You froze for a second.
Oh no.
It's
Where do
okay.
you want me to go back?
You were saying, let me see, do I have the otter transcript? Let me see the otter transcript and open it so I can see where it got weird. I was like, I'm losing you. Hold on.
That's okay. I can say it again.
Okay, you said, I just wish someone at that time, which was mostly you in my head, hey, let's try something different. And that was kind of like starting to mess up there.
Mhm.
So you could start with, I just wish someone at that time. And then whatever comes out is great.
Sure. So I just wish at that time that someone had helped me really process some of those fears, which was mostly you, Laura, in my head, hearing you on those videos and even on our live calls. But so many of those fears of, again, those people falling through the cracks, us not being able to customize the program for them and individual needs, and seeing that a lot of that fear wasn't actually the fear of poor outcomes, but the fear of just trying something different and maybe what it would take to create a scalable program. And at the end, when I saw the benefits and the the acceleration of how quickly my clients got outcomes within this group setting. I mean, I wish I had never delayed, right?
Mhm.
Because of how big of an impact it ultimately made.
Yeah, which I mean, I don't usually recommend making decisions from fear, of course, but I do think on the other side of fear, like if we just kind of reverse that a little bit and say, okay, well, what am I actually concerned about that's legitimate? And I think the concern of how do I actually deliver a program that is supporting people that isn't just, you know, fire hosing people with information or 'cause there's a lot of people out there that are very good sellers and not a lot of great deliverers, especially in my space, maybe not so much in the dietitian space. Usually they tend to err on the opposite side, which I know a lot of us are like, "I'm so good at helping people if I could just sell better," right? So, with the program, I think it is reasonable to want to construct it in a way that actually helps people, and it is a different skill set than just showing up on a call and coaching somebody. So, not to say that fear is the correct response, but I just want to remind people that there is value in being thoughtful and getting support with the construction of a program so that you're not just making it up and saying, I've never even been in a program myself as a client. So how am I supposed to know what's valuable? How am I supposed to know what helps people? And I think a lot of people in our space, in the dietetics world, especially, get into these things where it's like it's almost like they're just creating, a master's thesis and like trying to give everybody the biochemistry details of the health problem. And they're not actually constructing the program in a way that's really designed to get results. So I just wanted to mention that because it's like, again, fear is not the appropriate response to it, and I know, it is scary to do something new. It's the first time you do anything is always kind of like, "Oh, is this gonna work?" But it doesn't have to be something that stands in the way. It just needs to be something that you're learning how to do effectively so that you're not just, like, stumbling around in the dark, hoping that stuff works and then hoping people get results and then being frustrated if people aren't getting results. So, all of that said, I think it would be if you're open to sharing the financial impact, because when we were talking before we hit record, I didn't know how quickly you had, ramped up your salary. Cause I know you said you went from full time, well, two jobs now to running your own thing. And a lot of people, their goal is just to like replace their original salary with their business. So, what was your experience with the financials in that growth phase?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're seeing 7 clients 5 times a week, you can hit 6 figures, which I was on track to doing. So, let's say probably from January to May, if I brought in the same amount month to month, I could definitely hit that 6-figure mark, but definitely was not sustainable. Definitely
Mhm.
was not myself, right? And really losing myself in that process. And so when I added my scalable program and then I ran it twice in the second half of the year, I hit 200K. So doubled what I thought I was going to make, which is pretty crazy when you think about one, just distributing that, right? 200K in 1 year, but then actually that second half being so much more accelerated. And eventually I actually got off insurance because of, I mean, all the red tape, all the headaches that was around that. I mean, it blew my mind. And also just having so much more fulfillment in my job. I mean, you can't really put a number to that.
Mhm. I mean, yeah, you can hit 6 figures if you work until your eyeballs bleed. Is that the goal though? Is that really what you want with your life? Maybe not. So now that you have this business model, so you got out of insurance, I know that you've made I wouldn't really call it a pivot. It's kind of like a readjustment of your focus as far as the particular problem that you solve. I know when you first started running these programs, it was a broader niche. It was a little bit less specific as far as the health concerns are concerned. And then lately, you've been really narrowing down more into the PCOS world when it comes to hormonal health. What Walk me through because you were saying you were doing like 35 hours of one-on-one time a week to hit your six figures with your insurance model. Walk me through like what does a week of work look like for you now?
Mm. So I have 3 days, not 5 days, where I see private clients. And most of my private clients, I actually put through my signature program.
Mhm.
So that actually allows our time that we meet to be less about education and teaching or remembering all this information to really get down to how do we troubleshoot, how do we problem solve, or what are the mindset blocks that are getting in your way, which is really what creates the transformation, right? It's
Mhm.
not just the information that people need.
Mhm.
And I find that dynamic to be so much more helpful. And people also come into our sessions feeling so much more prepared and ready to take action because they've been doing work in between our sessions by diving into the curriculum or supportive tools within my signature program. So
Mhm.
that has been great, right? The reduction of one-on-one, 7 clients a day to maybe 3 or 4 a day for 3 days a week. And then outside of that, I can really help the clients within my program, but also the clients in my one-on-one program, my private program. And that has been so much better for me and for my clients, right? I can show up fully. I'm not running on empty. And that energy, I think, translates into, I mean, so much of what we do as dietitians, right, is to support healing and growth and to create a life that people want. And if our energy doesn't support that, I mean, it's not really conducive to the work that we do. So that helps me feel better about the work I'm doing. It also helps me feel more confident that I'm serving my clients to
Mhm.
my best capacity. So, I
Yeah.
mean, it's been huge business wise, personal wise, all areas.
Yeah. I mean, basically what we're saying, if you had stayed with that insurance model doing 35 clients a week all year and, maybe hitting 100K in revenue versus now doing over 200 with, I think you said maybe like 12 clients a week. That's like what, 30% of what you were doing client wise before with double
Mm.
plus the revenue. So, it's funny because when I'm marketing my programs and speaking to specific results and I say like double the revenue with less than half the number of one-on-one sessions, it's funny. It sounds so, like sham wow, these are the results you can get. But I just love that that's literally what happened to you. And it didn't actually take that long for that to happen. It
Mhm.
wasn't like you had to work on it for 10 years before you finally got to this place where you were able to have the increased revenue and decreased workload. It sounds like it was what, 6 months maybe of like
Mhm.
learning how to do it and executing it. And I know you're still working on things, and I don't think we're ever fully just like everything's done and I would never have anything else to change and there's no way this could get better. But even that result is like pretty incredible for, I would
Yeah.
say most people would be pretty interested in, in doing that you did. So just to take a little bit of a different angle here, because one of my goals with this little mini mastermind is for people to really see like what is it like behind the scenes of a business model like this and the journey you were on to get there. Is there anything that you did that in hindsight maybe you wish you could go back and be like, hey, why don't we skip that part? Or, just any mistakes that you made that I truly believe all decisions we make are part of our journey, right? Even the times where I've had launches that totally bombed, that has led me to now be able to support my clients better and be a lot more embodied in my recommendations as far as like niching and marketing and stuff like that. But all of that said, I know sometimes it's like, man, I could have skipped that part. Is there anything that you would say you wish you could have done differently, or maybe wish, if there was a mistake you made that in hindsight you would do differently, even if it contributed to where you are today?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is one, this idea that like more is better when it comes to getting results for clients. I think I was not even realizing I was so caught up in that, especially early on when you're building out a program. It's like kitchen sink of everything you've ever learned. And you feel like all of it's important. Everyone needs to know everything. They need all the PDFs, all the recordings. And one that took a lot of time and a lot of energy but didn't serve to actually be very effective, right?
Mhm.
And in fact, clients more have to like sift through all that information to find the stuff that they can take action on rather than feeling like they can take action immediately. And
Mhm.
so I think that's both a strategy, but also a headspace that I had to get out of. And honestly, I think part of it has to do with maybe ego as like a dietitian, like, oh, I know all this stuff and everyone needs to know like what I know in order to like do what they need to do. it's really getting out of my own head and putting myself in my client's shoes, right? That they're not thinking about food all the time, nutrition all the time, right? They're thinking about their life. They need something that is going to be easy and effective. And
Mhm.
that's my responsibility, not to just, information dump on them.
Mhm.
And so I think that mistake impacted me and my business, right? I spend a lot of energy and time on things that I probably didn't need to do. And it takes a lot to like record, right? Build out a deck, put down the script, add PDFs. I mean, I did so much of that. And I felt like a lot of that wasn't actually necessary for
Mhm.
a lot of my clients. And then I think just the quality of the program that I create to serve my clients, I think you can create a better quality program that gets results faster when
Mhm.
you're not just information dumping. So I think
Yeah.
that's something that I constantly have to go back to because I feel I'm still susceptible to that if I'm
Mhm.
careful.
I'm the same way, as you probably know, and it's something that it is hard. I don't know if sometimes it's probably ego. I think sometimes, and I feel like in a weird way as a dietitian, we're almost trained to try to like prove how smart we are because look at all these
Mm,
things we know, and we have to like prove to the doctors that they should listen to us and prove to the nurses that we can help. And it's very, I don't know. I think it's a little bit of a toxic environment if you ask me. And even when I'm in these like Facebook groups with dietitians, just the level of, you know, self-maintained toxicity, even with people that have their own private practices where they're like, you can't do this and you shouldn't be doing that. And, oh, I created this program. I saw somebody post recently. They said they had created a 6-week program that had 52 modules. And I was like, how on earth can you deliver, first of all, in any program, 52 modules? Second of all, in 6 weeks? And she's like, I feel like my clients are getting overwhelmed. It's like, yep, that sounds overwhelming. And I don't even know what's in the program. Right. So I feel like there's this, whether it's trained into us or it's just this feeling of, oh, I have this imposter syndrome. And the way I'm going to get over that is just like give them so much content. And that's what's going to be valuable. And I know something we talk a lot about in the program is just making sure you're focusing on the right definition of value for a client. The value is the result. The value is not how much information they get. The value is not how many PDFs there are, how many hours of video. And as you know, more is not better for most people. Usually it's like, how can I get the least amount of stuff to get the transformation? And that's like a big pivot from a mindset perspective that can be very difficult. And as I was saying before, it's not always an ego thing necessarily. Sometimes you're just passionate about the topic and there's so much you do know and you're like, I just want to share this. And that's what I run into a lot of the times is like, oh my gosh, there's all this really cool stuff that I'm learning. I've been doing this for a decade. I'm learning from my coaches and my peers and I want to share it. And it's like I have to very often look back at what I'm doing and be like, ooh, I definitely overloaded them. Let me see if I can go back and make things more simple. Let me maybe create some tools that'll be a little bit more efficient for people. And so it is something where I don't, you kind of have to go through the process of overdoing it to realize you're overdoing it. It's very hard to just nail it from the get-go, but I do think that's a really important lesson for people because if you are creating a scalable program or even a signature program, even if it's like a one-on-one program that you're kind of filling in the gaps with some handouts or video lessons or anything like that, it's a really common mistake and that hurts you because again it takes way more time to produce a program like that, and then it actually hurts your clients because you're making it too hard for them to get results, and then that in turn hurts you because if you're not getting people results it's really hard to sell a program that doesn't have evidence of results. So it's just this kind of like downward spiral that the biggest way out of it is to just get really honest about your program design strategy and ask yourself, why am I including all of this stuff? Is this actually designed to help people or is this just me trying to like literally unload my entire brain on a, piece of metal and glass that people can then absorb. So, I think that's really good advice. And like I said, the goal, I don't want people to then get into this perfectionist mindset of, "Oh my gosh, I can't make it too much. Now I have to be really paranoid about overdoing it." As I mentioned, I think it's really difficult to nail it the first or even the second time you run a program, but having that idea in mind that less is more, I think is a really good piece of advice for people to walk away with.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think about just all that time, right? Blood, sweat, and tears going into doing those things. And I love what you said, like asking yourself why. Like, why am I putting this in here? Is it because I just feel like I like this information, or, it looks nice, or maybe you saw someone else put it in their program, right? Like there's so many whys that you may not even realize you're abiding by, and to really pause and ask can really offer so much clarity and help your clients achieve their results so much faster.
Hmm. Definitely. So this has been super valuable. I think just being able to see the journey that you've been on, why you even did the work in the first place, just knowing, yeah, you could have been making quote good money in the original business model, but at what cost to you, to your spouse, to your future, to, your health even. And then when you made those adjustments to start offering this program, being able to, I mean, you created a very successful program and you also have the skills now to make it even better, which is really helpful. So that confidence to get it out there, even when you were nervous, even when it was like, oh, this is new, I don't know how it's going to go, and then the ability to go back and refine it and make it better, that's the process I really think everybody has to go through. So I'm really glad you shared that you weren't just thinking about it for a year. It's like, I know that this is what I want. And yeah, it's going to take some learning. It's going to take some growth. It's going to take some scary steps that I've never taken before, but it's worth it because the alternative is not okay, right? Like the alternative of staying where you were just like wasn't an option, which usually is what gets people motivated to make changes, right? So, all of that said, do you have any last words of wisdom for the people that are listening that are inspired by what you've done, inspired by your doubling of revenue and 30% of your one on one? So, actual statistics on somebody who has a health business in as a dietitian. Do you have any last minute words of wisdom for people who want to get on that same track, like just to help them get on that trajectory that you're on?
Hmm. I mean, even as we were having this conversation, I was thinking about people who would be listening to our conversation and how it's so easy to listen to these conversations and not do anything about it, right? It feels good to like learn. And even like if you join a coaching program with Laura or with someone else, it's like, yeah, it's great to learn all that stuff. And then so much gets in the way of taking action. Most of that stuff is not circumstantial. Most of it's in our heads, right? Of fear of making a mistake, like you said, fear of it not being perfect, fear of it not working, whatever it may be. And I think it's so important to not get caught up in just the ideas of building a business and like how it feels good to think about it, but to really take that action and to allow fear in those action taking moments, because there isn't going to be that absent of fear. I think in so much of that stuff, it sounds great to think about it in retrospect, like, yeah, like, cut my one on one at 30%. But I mean, I had no idea what was going to happen. I could have launched that program and it was like totally a bust. And, my fears in the moment was like, this program's going to crumble. My business is going to crumble in the first year. I'm going to be such a failure, right? It's like, it's just all our normal survival mechanisms doing what they're supposed to do. And to be able to say, I'm going to take action anyways, not just random action, right? Still strategic action, but doing it, not just thinking about it. So that I think that was huge for me. And I hope if anyone's in that place when they're listening to our conversation, say, okay, I can listen to this and also do something about it.
Yeah, definitely. The action taking, I think people really underestimate the importance, especially because as we were saying before, the quote mistake you made, you wouldn't have even known that until you did it, right?
Right.
There was no way for you to know before you created something what the actual best things were. So there has to be action because there's just no way to nail it just by thinking about it. So definitely agree with you. And it is scary and it's not something that, in our schooling, you study and you do all the work and then you take the test. In entrepreneurship, you take the test and then you learn how do I do better on the next one, right? And it's a very uncomfortable place for most of us type A, you know, 4.0 GPA type of students. It's like, no, I want to get it right because I worked hard enough on it before I did it. And that's not the way it works. And if you're waiting for it to be perfect because you thought about it enough, you're going to be waiting essentially forever. So, totally agree with that advice. And I hope that all of you listening will take that to heart and start doing things that are scary and know that you'll get better at it from the doing, not from the thinking. Well, anyway, Isabel, it was so awesome to talk to you about your journey. And I just love walking down memory lane, having been, there for a lot of it and being able to see what you've been able to accomplish in the last 3 years. And I know that you have even more amazing results ahead of you. So I can't wait to see what's next for you.
Amazing. Thank you, Laura. I loved having this conversation with you.